Philip here for a piece of the past, and today I'm in Munderley and Great Yarmouth on the Norfolk coast. It was early in the morning of Tuesday the 19th of January 1915 when 3 airships took off from Fuhlsbüttel in Hamburg in Germany. The Western Front had already ossified into trench warfare and total stalemate, and the Germans needed to find a new edge. They came up with a plan, and the plan was bold. It was also insane. They were going to use flammable hydrogen zeppelins to start the first ever terror bombing campaign of the United Kingdom. Mechanical troubles meant that one of the airships, called L6, had to turn around before it even left the continent. The other 2, L3 and L4, went out across the North Sea. However, a terrible combination of events hit them. Bad mapping and appalling weather. They got lost in the fog and they got blown off course. They had intended to come ashore in England and go and bomb Hull. Instead, they crossed over the coastline here in Norfolk. The first of the Zeppelins to cross the coast had a captain called Johann Fritz, and somehow he managed to realise that he was in the wrong place, work out exactly where he was, and he estimated that Hull was something like 100 miles to the northwest. He figured that if he headed to Great Yarmouth instead, there was at least a port there and he might be able to do some damage to some of the boats in the docks. Now these days, Great Yarmouth would be slightly easier to find because there's a giant big wheel and a huge pleasure beach here with a great big tourist centre. However, at that time all he had to go on was badly drawn maps and the lights that he could see on the ground, plus any incendiary devices they managed to drop. The second ship, L4, by all accounts, thought it had made landfall not far from Scarborough, around 150 miles away to the north as the crow, or indeed the Zeppelin, flies. It turned west and then ended up dropping incendiary bombs on Sheringham, Brancaster, Heacham, Snettisham, Dersham and Grimston before finally emptying what remained of the 2 tons of ordnance that they'd brought on King's Lynn. But I'm here on St. Peter's Plain in Great Yarmouth. That first airship, the L3, led by Johann Fritz, ended up over the top of this, and he ordered his men to drop their incendiary bombs. This is the site, specifically just next to that blue plaque there, is the site of where the first ever civilian air raid on Britain occurred. Nearby Norwich was allegedly saved because it was shrouded in a dense fog. A 53-year-old shoemaker, Samuel Smith, was walking down the street, just as I am, and he was killed instantly. 72-year-old Martha Taylor, who lived at number 22 St. Peter's Plain, was next to be killed. A blue plaque is here on number 25 to commemorate them both. Obviously, the site where those buildings were no longer has houses on it, and it's now a charity. In total, 4 people died. In the King's Lynn raid, bombs dropped cut short the life of Alice Glazely, who was 26. She'd been widowed just 3 months earlier, and her husband had been killed on the Western Front. The final victim was a 14-year-old boy called Percy Goat. He was asleep in bed. Local newspapers say that the material damage was estimated at £7,740, which is around about $10,000. In 2020 money, that's nearer to £850,000, or more than $1 million. But the monetary cost in damage from the raid was never the point. The point was proof of concept, and on that front, the bombing was a success. The first ever civilian air raid on Britain. Literally an explosive little piece of the past.